So hey guys. Welcome to my new channel. This is part 1. What if Izuku had wings quirk? This is my first video and I am so excited to see your response toward this wonderful what if. And I am also eager to see how many subscribers I will get after this. On this channel, you guys will see the full story if I get a good response, that is my promise to you. Now let's start the story. At 4 years old, Izuku was told that he was quirkless, which basically translated to useless. He was pushed around, bullied, taught that not all men were created equal. However, this was his first and only setback. Despite having no friends, Izuku was incredibly kind to everyone. He quickly learned how to fend for himself at school, hide the bruises, the burns, everything from his mother, who he had managed to convince long ago that the bullying had stopped ages before. Of course, she believed him, and sometimes, this made him feel a little bad, but he kept pushing forward. Thankfully, though, while karma can be a real jerk to people that deserve it, good karma is coming. Good karma was something that would help make the poor quirkless boy into the greatest hero that the world had ever seen. But we aren't at that part yet. In fact, Izuku isn't even in the story yet. In another universe, All Might, the #1 hero, would find Izuku and be inspired by the boy. He would see the dedication to being a hero, to saving others, and give him a powerful quirk called One for All. In another universe, this quirk would cause Izuku to break his bones over and over again, struggling to master this powerful quirk. However, that isn't the universe that we are focusing on. Because this One for All has a consciousness, known as the soul of the first person to wield the quirk, and we aren't talking about All for One's brother. No, the quirk came from somewhere. It came from someone, a soul that's connected to the quirk, and therefore, connected to each and every One for All user. And this person wasn't exactly what you'd expect of the quirk. And with them, our story begins. Opha, who had long ago forgotten her real name, floated to one side as All for One flew at a weakened All Might, who dodged and grabbed All for One's arm, throwing him away. "I'll make you pay for what you did to Nana," All Might roared. Opha rolled her eyes as she felt All Might charge the quirk all full percent, causing Opha's heart to start hurting. This happened every time one of the users used the quirk, and she just never got used to it, although she really wished that she could. All for One just laughed, sending a large mass of ice towards All Might. Not that Opha really cared. Honestly, she didn't even like any of the users. They could see her, but they didn't talk to her or anything. She was just handed down to the next one when the user decided that she was no longer useful. And, of course, used to fight all kinds of villains, heroes, vigilantes, and the like. But what all of the users had in common was the undeniable desire to destroy All for One once and for all. "Do you think Nana mattered in the grand scheme of my plan?" All for One asked, drawing Opha's attention to him. She wasn't completely paying attention to the fight. "You think that you matter, either? All that matters is that I take back One for All." Opha just shrugged. This fight was really uninteresting. She'd leave, but she wasn't allowed to go that far from the current user, especially during a fight, seeing that distance could weaken their ability to use the quirk. "You'll never be able to. One for All is a quirk suited for justice. It doesn't belong in the hands of a villain like you," All Might proclaimed. All for One laughed again, and at this very moment, Opha was instantly on guard as a strange ball of concentrated darkness appeared in All for One's hand. Who said anything about the quirk aspect of it? With that, All for One shot the ball towards All Might, turning it into a beam. Opha instantly lunged forward. If the current user died, who knows what would happen to her? And took the hit. When the darkness faded, All Might was still injured, a large wound in his side, but Opha was definitely worse off despite being an undead quirk. Opha panted, resting her hands on her knees, but All for One was grinning. Then he held his hands towards Opha. "Ah, there you are," All for One said, then shot another beam, this one pink in color, and Opha couldn't get out of the way. All Might, not that he would have cared anyway, was too busy trying to stop the bleeding of his wound to notice the beam until it had already engulfed him and Opha. And instantly, Opha felt lighter. When the beam faded, none of the pain from any of her injuries was there. A quick glance at All Might made her realize that he had healed a little. To what? Why had All for One healed him mid-fight? What was going on? All Might instantly walked forward, moving slightly around Opha before firing up One for All. But it didn't hurt at all. Opha's eyes widened in surprise, then she stepped back. And she stepped back again. All Might didn't notice as he continued to fight with All for One, and, before long, All Might won. And Opha was already a few blocks away. Opha quickly ran back over as All Might stepped back, standing over All for One's dead body, but Opha knew him by now. All for One wasn't dead, but he was very close. If All Might punched him in the chest, then the deed would be done. But that pink beam had stopped the pain. All for One had healed her and All Might, and he had potentially set her free. Besides, All Might wouldn't listen to her anyway. Police sirens went off, and they both turned their heads to see Detective Lie Detector, not his real name, but Opha couldn't remember what it really was, get out of his police car and rush over, making sure that All Might was alright. Other police cars arrived, surveying the scene, and then an ambulance appeared to take All Might to the hospital because he was still injured. Ofa thought for a few seconds, then floated over and got into the ambulance just as the doors shut, then stared at All Might, who was telling the detective that he was indeed fine as they drove to the nearest hospital. Yeah, All Might was not fine. He was put into surgery because a rib had been broken and had potentially punctured his lungs, and he was put in a medical coma for a few days while his body recovered. In that time, Ofa decided to test the limits of how far she could go. She wandered the halls, stopping by dying patients that were so close to death that they could see her. Normal people couldn't see her, but the dying, her users, and people that her user allowed to see her could. She talked to the dying, joked around, found ways to alert the doctors or nurses of something. Even though she was a ghost, she could still touch stuff and eat, which was an interesting experience. Most of the time, she didn't do either, though, but still. However, 3 days after All Might surgery, Ofa decided to test something out. She stood in front of the hospital doors, took a deep breath. Then walked outside of the building. It was a rather sunny day, and there were plenty of people walking around, so Ofa just slipped into the crowd, being careful not to bump into people as she just walked around. After walking around for a while, though, Ofa had ended up making her way to a quiet, peaceful neighborhood, and she stopped at a park, glancing over to realize that it was already dark outside. Oops, Ofa whispered, then smiled, looking a little forced. All Might surely won't notice if I'm gone all night. Her smile became genuine as she sat down on one of the swings, loving how it made her feel like she was a young girl again, back on the playground. Whoa, so you really have a superpower? Idiot, the term for those is quirks. Well, they're still superpowers, dummy. Well, I think she looks dumb. I mean, what's with her hair? Yeah, and those clothes, do you need specific clothes for your lame powers or something? And what can your powers do? You're just a weirdo. Weirdo. Outcast. Worthless. Miss, are you alright? Ofa's head shot up to see a young, green-haired boy, about 9 years old, giving her a concerned look. Aw, how nice. Wait. He could see her. Ofa instantly stood up and leaned away from the boy, completely shocked. The boy looked surprised, then he looked sad. I'm sorry, I'll go, the boy started. Why, you can't see me? Ofa asked, kneeling down next to him. Wow, this boy was kinda short and scrawny. He was wearing an All-M t-shirt, so an All Might fan, huh? And a pair of shorts. He looked genuinely concerned for her, which honestly surprised Ofa. How could he even see her? Yeah, the boy said, sounding confused. Should I not be able to? His eyes got an excited look. Do you have some kind of invisibility quirk? Wow, that's so cool. No, nothing like that, Ofa said. I'm dead. The boy looked surprised. Why, you're a. Please don't say ghost. I'm not a fan of being called that, Ofa said. But yeah. Oh, then how can I see you? The boy asked. Must be part of your quirk. Haven't you seen a ghost before? Ofa asked. At that, the boy instantly grew stiff. Oh boy. I'm quirkless, the boy said quietly. Oh. Wait a second. How can you give me your hands right quick? Ofa asked, holding her hands towards the boy. The boy shrugged, then grabbed Ofa's hands carefully. Ofa smiled, then closed her eyes and let herself shine slightly. The boy's eyes grew wide as the light surrounding Ofa grew to surround him as well, and then it faded into both of them. What? The boy said, trailing off. Ofa smiled. That was my quirk detector. If you really didn't have a quirk, then that light would have stayed away from you. But I have 2 pinky toe J joints, the boy said, eyes tearing up. Okay, what the actual heck, Ofa said. 2 pinky toe joints means quirklessness now. Huh? The boy asked. Look, kid, having an extra pinky toe joint doesn't mean anything about quirks, Ofa said. People with a second joint, seriously, what the heck, that's weird. Can have a quirk, people without can be quirkless. It doesn't matter. That's not a valid way to tell how someone's getting a quirk or not, Jesus. But the boy started. Just as Ofa felt a small tug at the back of her brain, and she knew that she had to go back. Even if it was to tell All Might that she was leaving for good. Look, I have to go, okay? Ofa asked. How about I talk to you again tomorrow? Meet me at the edge of the park whenever you can. You'll be able to see me, others can't. The boy hesitated, but Ofa saw something small in his features. Hope. And you'll tell me about my quirk? The boy asked, clearly thinking that this was too good to be true. Of course, Ofa said, giving the boy a hug. He hugged her back, and she cherished the warmth for a few seconds. She hadn't felt real warmth for so long. Then she pulled away. You head home. What's your name? Izuku, the boy said. Izuku Midoriya. And you are? Ofa smiled. I don't have a name. Izuku looked surprised. You don't? Ofa shook her head. Nope. Sorry, but I have to go. See you tomorrow. With that, Ofa walked away. Izuku hesitated for a few seconds, then he headed home as well. Where were you? Ofa rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. Taking a stroll. Why does it matter? You are unconscious for 3 days. I'm not just gonna sit around and wait for you to wake up. You can't go far away and you know it. Night Eye said he was one of the only people that could see Ofa, which annoyed the heck out of her. Ofa glared at him. Look, I can do what I want. I'm my own person. You're conscious, Quirk. You aren't your own person, Night Eye said. Ofa bared her teeth, then took a deep breath. Okay, you wanna go there? You really wanna do that? Then fine. She uncrossed her arms, then slightly stepped forward. You know, I don't have to stay here. I don't need to let you use my quirk. It's not your quirk, it's mine, All Might said, clearly upset with Ofa. No, you're wrong, Ofa said, really angry as she started to glow. And a pair of black feathered wings erupted out of her back. Ofa could see the shock and terror appear on Night Eye and All Might's faces, and she found herself smirking. You know what? Ofa said. I don't need one for all. Keep it. Go ahead. If you can even use it when I'm gone. With that, she turned away and speed walked away. And she heard the two shout in surprise when she disappeared. As soon as Ofa walked out of the hospital onto the nearly abandoned street, she spread her wings and began to fly. Just before the sun rose, Ofa landed at the edge of the park and folded her wings behind her back, causing them to disappear. She sighed. It felt so nice to have her wings back, but she didn't want to scare Izuku with them and sat down on a park bench, leaning backwards as she started to mutter. Alright, so I'm finally free, so I can do whatever I want and go wherever I want. Sure, I will talk to Izuku and help him figure out his quirk first. I'm honestly curious as to how he can see me, so that will be an adventure and a half. But after that, what next? Well, it might be a good idea to head home for a while and see if Mother's ghost is still around. She might have moved on already, though dang it, I'm willing to bet almost everyone from back then has already moved to heaven or hell. More than a few I'm willing to bet hell for. What? Ofa jumped and turned to see Izuku jump up onto the bench and sit next to her, looking at her. Oh, sorry, Ofa said. I have a habit of talking to myself sometimes. Oh, Izuku said. That's alright. Thanks, Ofa said. Don't you have school today, Izuku? Izuku shook his head. It's summer vacation. Oh, it's already that time of year again? Ofa asked. I never really notice. I guess that a ghost wouldn't, Izuku said. So you really don't have a name? Ofa shrugged. I forgot it a long time ago. These days, I don't have a real name. I'm going to come up with a good one, though. Mind if I give you one? Izuku asked. Ofa thought for a few seconds. You know what? That actually sounds like a good idea. She patted the boy on the head. Izuku flinched, but then seemed fine. You have any good ideas for one? Izuku nodded, then carefully took out a notebook and handed it to Ofa. Ofa gave him a confused look, then carefully took the notebook only for it to fall through her. Oh, sorry. Ofa said. No, sorry, you're a ghost, you probably can't hold normal stuff, Izuku said sheepishly, picking the notebook back up. Then he flipped to one of the middle pages and showed it to Ofa. Ofa stared at the page in shock. On it, there was a detailed drawing of her, plus some notes about her. How had this boy figured anything about her? At the bottom of the page was a few names, all but one crossed out. Well, you said that you don't have a name yesterday, and I really like drawing people in my notebooks and writing about their quirks, Izuku said. So I thought of a few name ideas, but I think the name Odin sounds best. Odin? Ofa asked, already liking the name. As in the All-Father Norse god. How'd you come up with that? I don't know, but it just fits, Izuku said. So do you like it? I don't just like it, I love it. Ofa no, Odin said happily as the air around them began to glow, but neither one really noticed. It's a really pretty and powerful name. She reached up for a high five. High five. Izuku smiled, then gave her a high five. Suddenly, a thin, green string appeared around both their hands, tying to their wrists for a few seconds, then it disappeared and Odin shrunk, growing younger until she looked the same age as Izuku, her wings popping out of her back, but they were smaller than they had been before. Both of them jumped back, clearly surprised. What the Izuku started just as Odin heard Izuku's voice in her head. That was weird. Green string, what just happened? How did that appear? Why does my back itch? And Odin instantly realized exactly what had happened. Oh, Odin said. Oh. What was that? Izuku asked. Odin smiled, then pat him on the head. I think that was your quirk. What? Izuku asked, then reached behind him to scratch his back. And a pair of wings burst out. Izuku jumped in surprise, standing up, then he looked behind him, eyes growing wide at the wings. What the? SHH, calm down, Odin said carefully. But Izuku started. What in the world? They both turned to see a blonde-haired kid staring at Izuku with wide eyes. Hey Kaken? Izuku asked, a note of fear in his voice. Auden glanced at him, then took a deep breath and focused on feeling calm, mentally sending it towards Izuku. Instantly, Izuku looked less tense, even as Kaken came stomping over. "What the hell, Deku?" Kaken hissed. "You have a quirk now?" "Hey, leave him alone," Auden said. Kaken glared at her. "Who the hell are you? You can't see her?" Izuku asked. "Of course I can. What, do you think I'm blind, Deku?" Kaken growled. "You Izuku said. "Look, it's pretty early, you probably shouldn't be out and about at this hour," Auden said. "Well, to me, it looks like you shouldn't, either. Are you kidnapping him?" Kaken asked, setting off some explosions in his hand's interesting quirk. This boy looked ready to fight Auden, but she wasn't looking for a fight. Especially not when she was actually 9 years old again. No, nothing like that," Auden said. "Yeah, in fact, we were just leaving," Izuku said. "Can we go please? I don't want to be here." "So you've figured out that we can communicate telepathically," Auden thought back. "Do you know how?" "I have a suspicion, but I'll tell you later." Okay, thanks." "Yeah, I have to make sure he gets home," Auden said. "I don't trust you," Kaken said. "Come on, Kaken, we really should get going," Izuku said, awkwardly moving the wings on his back around, causing them to fumble all over the place. Auden moved slightly to the side to avoid getting hit by the wings. "Okay, you need to get used to wings." "How did they appear?" Izuku thought, clearly a little freaked out. "It's alright," Auden replied. "The wings are a part of you. Just move them like you would move your arms and you can get them behind your back." Izuku looked at her and gave her a small nod, then carefully folded the wings behind his back. "See, you're getting it," Auden said. "What just happened?" Kaken asked. The two looked at him. Can we talk about this another time?" Izuku asked. "I want to know what's going on now," Kaken said. "Should we just?" Auden trailed off. "He's just concerned about me," Izuku said. "Okay, then, I'll say something," Auden said. "Look, neither of us is completely sure what's going on just yet," Auden said. "So how about we tell you what's going on when we figure out what's going on?" "I don't trust you, I don't even know you," Kaken said. "I'm Auden said just as something popped up in her and Izuku's thoughts, a voice neither was able to place. Auden Midoriya, the caring side of Izuku's personality. Izuku and Auden's eyes grew wide and they looked at each other as the voice continued. Izuku's quirk makes him able to create and share life force. By giving Auden a name, Izuku made a contract. Auden can consume some of Izuku's endless supply of life force and in exchange, Izuku can use part of Auden's quirk. This also allows the two to communicate and it gives Auden a room in Izuku's mind palace, plus the chance to help control everything related to Izuku's ability to care for himself and others. "You two are looking at each other funny, something just happened," Kaken said, clearly weirded out. They both looked at Kaken. "I'll tell you some other time, alright?" Izuku asked. "No, I wanna know now," Kaken said. Auden thought for a few seconds, then sent a wave of emotions towards Izuku. The voice had said that she controlled his ability to care, so maybe some care would help in this situation. "Kaken please," Izuku said. "I'm still figuring out what's going on myself, but I promise, besides my family, you'll be the first person I'll explain everything to, alright?" Kaken hesitated for a few seconds, then sighed. "Whatever. But I'm making sure you get home." He glared at Auden, who just shrugged. "Alright, but Auden isn't going to hurt me," Izuku said. "Whatever, Deku," Kaken said, then grabbed Izuku's hand and dragged him away. Izuku looked at Auden, who thought for a few seconds, then something clicked. The voice said something about you having a mind palace. "Oh, let's see if this works." And, just like that, Auden disappeared and Izuku's wing disappeared as well. Auden appeared in a black room that only had a little light in it. "Whoa," Auden said, finding the echo that resulted strange. "I can still hear you, where did you go?" Izuku's voice echoed through the room. Auden looked around, then smiled. The voice said something about a mind palace. "Remind me later, I'll show you something that talks about what a mind palace is. Basically, though, it's in your mind and I guess it's a place where I can go, but it's really empty in here." "Hey, my mind isn't empty," Izuku said. Auden laughed. "No, it's not, but this room is." She thought for a few seconds. "I'll have to decorate, but I can experiment with that later. For now, I'll appear again when you get home, alright?" "Alright," Izuku said. Auden smiled, then she sat down and waited. "Hey, where did that girl go?" Kaken asked. "And those wings?" Somewhere," Izuku said, clearly unsure. "Okay, then," Kaken said, then stayed silent for the rest of the way there. Izuku waved to Kaken as he walked into his house, where he found his dad making breakfast in the kitchen. When Izuku had been declared quirkless, oh god, I still have to tell dad that I'm apparently not quirkless. His dad had been working in America and Izuku had been living with his mom, but after that, Inko had suddenly gotten a new job opportunity somewhere in Scotland. Hisashi had told her to go for it and he would stay with their son. Of course, they rarely saw Inko anymore, but Izuku was actually fine with that. She called often and she visited on Christmas, but other than that, yeah. Hisashi turned and smiled at Izuku. Hey Izuku. Didn't think you'd be heading out for a walk this early in the morning. Hey, dad, can't I talk to you right quick? Izuku asked. Instantly, Hisashi looked concerned and he gave Izuku his full attention. Izuku, is something wrong? Not exactly, Izuku said, but he was getting really nervous. It's alright, Aden instantly thought, and Izuku felt a wave of calm. Wow, that was weird, but kinda cool at the same time. What does that mean? Hisashi asked. Izuku said. Mind showing up now, Aden. Aden didn't respond for a few seconds, just long enough for Izuku to wonder if he had just been imagining things. Then he felt a tug somewhere in the back of his mind, and Aden appeared next to him and Izuku felt the wings appear on his back again. Hisashi jumped, taking a few steps back as Aden carefully folded her wings. Izuku did the same and smiled at Hisashi. Hello. Aden said. What the Hisashi said, then his eyes grew really wide as he noticed the wings on Izuku's back. Izuku, where did you get a pair of wings? That's a long story, Izuku said. But, it turns out. Izuku isn't quirkless, Aden said. Hisashi stared at the two for a few seconds, and in that time, Izuku's anxiety hasn't appeared yet, shot through the roof, wondering exactly what would happen. Then Hisashi smiled, kneeled down, and gave Izuku a big hug. That's awesome. Hisashi said. I knew that something seemed off. I know, right? Aden asked, rolling her eyes. I mean, telling if someone's quirkless based on their number of pinky toe joints. She sighed, shaking her head. The entire concept is pretty dumb. So do you represent his quirk? Hisashi asked, looking at her. Well, it's not as simple as that, Izuku said. Huh? Hisashi asked. Izuku's quirk allows him to create and share life force, Aden explained. Basically, what that means is that he generates life energy, which allows him to see ghosts wandering around like me, for example. You're a ghost? Hisashi asked, eyes almost as big as his head at this point. Aden nodded. Yeah, anyway. Izuku can give ghosts like me a new name or something. That's how it's kinda working right now, and that makes a contract. The terms of it are basically that I can take a portion of his life force. He has a ton of it, so he isn't really affected by that, and I also get to be in charge of his ability to care about himself and others. In exchange, he can use my quirk. Whoa, that's pretty cool. Hisashi said, beaming at Izuku. Who knew that you had such an out there quirk? Pretty different from mine and Inko's, though. Yeah, I guess, Izuku said. Quirks that develop independent from the person's parents often take a bit longer to discover, Aden added. Honestly, Izuku probably wouldn't have learned it for a long time unless I happened to be at the park and he saw me. Hisashi said. Well, that's awesome news. All of it is. He gave Izuku another hug, then hesitated and looked at Aden. Can I give you a hug, or since you're a ghost, can I not? I'm not sure, Aden said. Well, let's see, Hisashi said, then reached forward and gave Aden a hug, surprising Izuku and Aden. Hisashi smiled, patting Aden on the head. Well, ghost or not, I guess you're now part of our family, huh? Aden smiled at him. Am I really? Well, if dad says you are, then you definitely are, Izuku thought back. Aden's smile grew wider, and she nodded. Why yeah, I guess I am. Great, Hisashi said. So, well, if we need to get you a bed or something. No, I already have a place, Aden said. Huh? Hisashi asked. It's called the Mind Palace, Izuku said, saying the word slowly as if he didn't completely understand. It's a spot in Izuku's head where I, as well as any other ghosts he makes a contract with, stay, Aden explained. I'm still figuring stuff out about it right now. It's a black room with a simple light. It hasn't really been created yet, so yeah. Huh, Hisashi said. Well, then. I'm going to finish making breakfast for the three of us, then we can eat, then we'll head to go get Izuku's quirk registered, alright? Yes. Izuku said happily. Aden and Hisashi laughed. Should have guessed you'd react like that, Hisashi said. 5 years late, but it is what it is. Now, you both ready for pancakes and eggs? Yum. Izuku said. Doesn't sound like your average Japanese breakfast, Aden said. Hisashi chuckled. I worked in America for more than a few years and I like their breakfast foods, so I hope you don't mind. Oh, it sounds amazing. I was just commenting, Aden said. Alright, now, you two wash up, Hisashi said. They'll be done in a few minutes. Izuku and Aden nodded, then Izuku showed her over to the bathroom so they could wash up. Hisashi squeezed Izuku's hand carefully as he and Izuku entered the government office for Quirk registration. Auden was in the Mind Palace, and based on the fact that random images were appearing in Izuku's head, he guessed that she was creating objects to fill the Mind Palace. As Hisashi went to the front counter to get put on the waiting list, Izuku couldn't help but glance around at everyone else there. It was just about entirely 4-year-olds and their parents, but in the back, there was a kid around his age alone. There was a boy sitting alone, looking at his feet. Hisashi tapped Izuku's shoulder, then gestured for him to find a seat. Izuku nodded, then walked over to the boy. He had soft-looking purple hair, and as Izuku got close, he noticed some fading bruises and scuff marks on the boy's face and exposed arms. That can't be good, Auden thought quietly, so she was also paying attention to the boy. Izuku stopped and tapped the boy's shoulder, causing the boy to jump. "Hey, mind if I sit here?" Izuku asked. Go ahead," the boy said quietly, sounding hoarse and unsure. Izuku smiled, then sat next to the boy, kicking his legs lightly back and forth. Neither boy had their feet on the ground. "What's your name?" Izuku asked. Hitachi," the boy said. I don't want to say my last name." "Oh well, nice to meet you, Tashi-chan," Izuku said and could practically feel Auden cringe. "Please call him something else," Auden said. Hitachan," Izuku said. "Better," Auden said. "I'm asking you about that later," Izuku warned. And you are?" Hitachi said. "I'm Izuku," Izuku said. "Izuku Midoriya." He carefully tapped his head. "And my friend Auden says hi, too." "I didn't say that," Auden pointed out. "Oh, shush, I'm letting him know that you exist," Izuku shot back. What?" Hitachi asked. "Auden's part of my quirk," Izuku explained. "I can see ghosts and make a contract with them by giving them a name." "Weird," Hitachi said. "What's your quirk?" Izuku asked, clearly excited. It isn't really cool," Hitachi said. "I doubt that highly quirks are amazing pieces of art that are fit to suit the user. No, 2 quirks are exactly alike, which makes every quirk unique and special," Auden mused. "I don't think that's true," Izuku said. "Auden says that everyone's quirk is cool. I think that's true. I mean, quirks are all unique. Every single one is amazing. You shouldn't say that it's not cool because that's not true." Hitachi gave him a surprised look, then looked about to cry. "Why you won't say that after hearing my Q quirk?" It's a villain's quirk. I can't be a hero with this." "No quirk is a villain's quirk," Auden thought. "There's no such thing as a villain's quirk," Izuku said. "The thing that determines villain-like qualities is the person themselves, not a quirk," Auden thought. "The only thing that can be villain-like is the person and their personality," Izuku said. "Tito-chan isn't a villain unless he wants to be one," Auden thought. "You don't want to be a villain, right?" Izuku asked. "Oh, of course not," Hitachi said. "Who would?" "Then you won't be a villain," Izuku said. "So, what's your quirk?" Hitachi hesitated. I can brainwash people. If someone responds to me, then I can control what they do." He squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the inevitable hatred from this boy. "Brainwashing?" Izuku asked excitedly. "Oh my gosh, that's so awesome." Hitachi opened his eyes and gave him an odd look. Huh? All you have to get is a verbal response from a villain, then bam, you can order them to surrender," Izuku said. "That would be amazing for hostage situations. You would just have to say something that the villain would have to respond to, like something insulting their mom or some kind of popular joke, then they would answer, and you'd win the day." "Oh, I wish I had a quirk that cool." "Hey, I can hear you," Auden protested. Izuku laughed. "Sorry, Auden, but you get what I mean, right?" He turned to Hitachi. Only to see him crying. Sorry, didn't mean to make you cry," Izuku said as Hitachi reached over and gave him a big hug. Thank you," Hitachi whispered. As Hisashi walked over and sat down, giving Hitachi a concerned look. "Is everything alright?" Hisashi asked, kneeling down next to Izuku and Hitachi. "Hey, what's going on?" Izuku and Hisashi turned their heads to see a woman with blue hair rush over, clearly concerned. Hitachi looked up, then got up and walked over, hugging the woman, who looked surprised, then sat down in one of the chairs, positioning herself so Hitachi could sit next to her. Hisashi sat next to Izuku. "That's Shinsu-san," Hitachi said. The woman Shinsu must have been her last name smiled and pat him on the head. "I told you to call me mom, Hitachi, but are you alright?" Hitachi nodded, wiping away his tears. I'm fine." He looked at Izuku. Thank you." Izuku looked confused. Auden felt confused, too. He shouldn't be thanking you for something that should just be said to him, Auden thought. "What are you thanking me for?" Izuku asked. I needed to hear that," Hitachi said, tears coming to his eyes again. "Hear what?" Shinsu said, giving her son an odd look. That I can be a hero," Hitachi said, then burst into tears again. Shinsu looked surprised, then she beamed at him. I've been telling you since you told me about your quirk, it's a wonderful quirk. You shouldn't doubt it, Izuku said. But everyone always says that it's horrible and villain-like, and Hitachi trailed off, then burst into tears again. Brainwashing can be so useful. Auden gushed as Shinsu tried to convince her son otherwise. I've never met someone with a quirk like that personally, but I remember hearing about this one person back during the Quirk Wars that had a similar quirk that were famous worldwide. Who? Izuku asked. I think that they were called, Auden thought. Spirit's voice, Izuku said, his voice somewhere between his own and Auden's. Hisashi, Shinsu, and Hitachi gave him an odd look. What was that? Shinsu asked. Spirit's voice, Izuku, well, Auden speaking through Izuku repeated. I'm not sure of everything about them because it's been 125 years, give or take. However, during the Quirk Wars in America, there was a famous figure fighting somewhere near California. It's a shame that I was unable to meet them because I was in Rhode Island at the time, but that doesn't matter at the moment. They were among the first heroes in America. Their quirk let them take control of someone like a puppet through some kind of series activation. Sure, at first, people found them to be a little strange and scary, but they saved so many lives and were one of the big reasons that heroes were even created in the first place. Without a select few fighters, a total of 50 people around the 50 states, to be specific, then there would be no heroes today for people to dream about being. Izuku Auden looked at Hitachi. Their quirk is one of the most useful I've seen in my entire existence, and that's saying plenty seeing that I've been around for over 200 years. I've been around since about 10 years after quirks first appeared. Izuku blinked, then shook his head as his voice went back to normal. Well, now that we've had today's history lesson, Auden's right. Your quirk is really useful, Hitachin. He smiled warmly. I hope that someday we'll get to be in the same hero class. Hitachi smiled. Why yeah. Hitachi Shinsu? The clerk called out. All four looked in that direction, then Hitachi and his mom stood up. His mom thought for a few seconds, then quickly typed something onto her phone and handed it to Hisashi. Here, give me your number, that way we can talk again sometime, she said. Hisashi nodded, then quickly did the same, handing her his phone. They quickly exchanged numbers, then Hitachi and his mom walked over to talk to the quirk register person that was ready for them. Hisashi patted Izuku on the head. Well, it looks like you've made yourself a new friend. But what exactly happened with that voice? Apparently I can talk through you now, Auden stated simply. Well, that's helpful, Izuku shot back. Apparently Auden can talk through me, Izuku shrugged. Oh well, day one with your quirk and we're already learning some of your great tricks, Hisashi said. Can't wait to see where you'll end up by the time you're old enough to attend a hero school. UA, Izuku said quietly. Auden thought. What's wrong with UA? Izuku asked, confused. Nothing, I guess it's just not the most fun place I've been to. Izuku's eyes grew wide. Wait, you've been to UA? Haha, remind me later, I'll tell you what I know, and as a big middle finger, I might even tell you and Hitachin a trick into acing the entrance exam. Why does that sound foreboding? Auden laughed. It really should, but don't worry, I'll tell you everything later. Okay, Izuku thought just as the clerk called out, Izuku Midoriya. Strangely, this was before the bunch of 4-year-olds. Then again, they probably did that because of Hitachi and Izuku being older. Hisashi and Izuku got up and walked to the area where they would be able to talk to whoever was open for them about quirk registration. Izuku's quirk registration person insisted on being called Sir Akio Hasegawa. He was a tall, muscular man that looked barely able to fit into his suit, and he didn't even bother with the tie. He was in his mid-40s, had brown hair, was going bald, and had a big handlebar mustache and delicate-looking glasses. This man looked, and, with his cute voice that didn't fit his size, sounded ridiculous, but this man was the one that was reading through Izuku's file and gave him a doubtful look. It says here that you don't have a quirk, Sir Hasegawa said. You were diagnosed as quirkless 5 years ago, correct? I don't see a sign of you having one. With all due respect, there have been cases in the past where people with 2 pinky toe joints have had quirks, Izuku said. Wow, a kid knows medical history, Sir Hasegawa said. Look, for a few seconds, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You say you have a quirk. Well, then, let's see it. Izuku nodded, then closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Auden, it's your time to shine, Izuku thought. He could practically feel Auden nod in agreement and excitement. Well, Sir Hasegawa said. I don't have all day. In a burst of light that was purely for dramatics, Auden appears. Izuku quickly stood up as wings appeared on his back. Sir Hasegawa jumped while Hisashi, who was standing towards the wall, smiled. WWWA? Sir Hasegawa said. Auden smiled and waved. Hi, I'm Olive, and I like warm hugs. 2 points if you get the reference. She giggled. Nah, my name's Auden. So the kid can make people appear and take their appearances alright, Sir Hasegawa said. Auden and Izuku shook their heads. No, not exactly, Auden said. I didn't appear out of nowhere, I came from the Mind Palace. The what? Sir Hasegawa said. Mind Palace, Izuku sighed. It's where my sides, Auden smiled. It's where Izuku's sides stay when we aren't out and about. Sides? Sir Hasegawa and Hisashi asked at the same time. I still don't really understand that one myself, but Auden said that she wants to be called the caring side, Izuku said. Auden looked at Izuku. It's a reference to something, I promise I'll watch it later with you, alright. For now, though, trust me, I'm just calling myself Auden, the caring side. Okay, Sir Hasegawa said. So, how does this side thing work? I can create and share something called life force, Izuku said. I gave Auden her name, she's a ghost and that made a contract. I give her a portion of my life force and let her control my ability to care for myself and others. In exchange, I can use her quirk. It's a win-win. Interesting, do you have any other contracts? Sir Hasegawa asked. Izuku shook his head. No, not yet. I just made a contract with Auden this morning, actually. I see, Sir Hasegawa said. So you don't know your limit to how many ghosts you can make a contract with? I don't, Izuku said, then looked at Auden. Do you have any idea? Auden thought for a few seconds, then closed her eyes and willed herself to feel Izuku's life force, then she barely stopped herself from gasping. She'd known that Izuku's life force had been larger than the average person's, it had to be. After all, his quirk was literally to create and share the stuff, but whoa. A normal person's life force around the time Auden was born was about the size of a tennis ball, and that was just what they had at birth. As they aged, yeah, they would get more or less depending on what they ate and stuff. When quirks appeared, it became about the size of a bowling ball for a person with a quirk. One for all users usually had ones that were a little bigger than that. Well, right before receiving the quirk, they did anyway. Auden had to take some of theirs from time to time, but it remained around the same until Auden was passed along. She had plenty stored up from the last 200 years, but still. Izuku, however. Compared to a tennis ball or bowling ball. Izuku's life force was about the size of a freaking mountain. And Auden was only taking about the size of 2 bowling balls worth. Auden's eyes snapped open, and she looked at Izuku. Did you see any of that? Auden asked. No. Izuku said, clearly unsure. You have the life force the size of a mountain. Auden said. In comparison to a normal person with a quirk, well, normal people have a life force about the size of a bowling ball. So how many contracts can he make? Sir Hasegawa asked, his eyes wide. Well, seeing that I'm getting 2 bowling balls worth of life force due to the contract, you'll probably be able to have a limitless amount, Auden said, looking at Izuku. Really? Izuku asked, eyes wide. Auden nodded. Yeah. Well, then, I guess I'll write that down, Sir Hasegawa said. I'll make note of that, and I have a feeling that you'll have to constantly update your quirk file with every single contract you made, so I'm just going to put you on my schedule to make sure you talk to me about it once a year. I'll send you mail when I have the date finalized, as well as my number, so I can know ASAP. Does that sound good? Do we have to update every single time? Hisashi asked. We like to stay informed, Sir Hasegawa said. It's kind of a security measure. That way, if some hotshot villain or vigilante appears, we have an easier time identifying them. You don't have to worry about me doing something like that, but I'll keep you updated, Izuku promised. Good, Sir Hasegawa said, leaning back in his chair. We'll send a report to your school so they can be updated. And Auden, do you need to attend school as well? Auden shrugged. Technically, I can just be in Izuku's head all day. I'll still hear all the lectures and stuff, and I can help Izuku on tests and homework. But we can talk telepathically, so nothing could really stop me from doing that. Save quirk suppressants, if those would even work, since I'm in Izuku's head, so yeah. 2 heads are better than 1. I wonder what it'll be like when there's more of you, Sir Hasegawa said. Well, that's all I need from you. Have a good day, do whatever you'd like, I guess. Call me when you get my number. We will, Hisashi promised. Well, I hope you have a good day as well. We're going to head home to call my wife and tell her everything. Sir Hasegawa nodded. Well, have fun with that. We will, Hisashi said, then turned to Auden. It might be easier if you retreat into the Mind Palace for a little while. Yeah, less people, and the wings'll disappear, Auden agreed, then disappeared. That was interesting, huh? Izuku asked as they walked out of the office area. Yeah, Auden said. Do you think I should make more contracts soon? Izuku asked. Auden stayed silent for a few seconds. Well, probably. I mean, I'm in control of how much you care, and if I'm alone, I'll probably overdo it somehow. How can you overdo caring? That just sounded weird. Ever heard of overbearing parents? Auden asked. Or helicopter parents. That comes from overcaring. I see, Izuku thought. Well, how about we go around one of these nights to meet some other ghosts and make some contracts? Sounds like a good idea, but remember, you still need to get enough sleep yourself, Auden thought. Taking care of yourself will make you healthier, stronger, and in a better mood, which will make it easier to help others. Okay, that's part of me wanting to be more caring. Izuku snorted, earning a strange look from Hisashi. Yeah, we get it, you're like that one mom friend that takes care of everyone. That's exactly what I'm supposed to be, Auden reminded him. If you start being a mother to the other sides, then I'm going to exclusively call you mom, Izuku warned her. Joke's on you, I like that nickname, and I'm going to use it, Auden said. Point if you get the reference. Izuku smiled. Got it, mom. Wait, I can't call you that, I still have my mom. Mama? Auden asked jokingly. Too kiddish, Izuku complained, making a face. Moo, how about Oba-san? Auden asked. No, that makes me sound like an old lady. Ooh, muddy. Muddy? Izuku asked. It means mother in German, Auden explained. That way, you can call your real mom and I can be muddy. Or does that sound too weird? Basically, I'm going to call you mom in some other language, Izuku thought. We can use Google Translate to find some interesting ideas later. Great. Auden said as Hisashi and Izuku walked out of the building. Izuku, what's up? Hisashi asked, giving his son an odd look. Oh, Auden and I were just talking, Izuku said. I jokingly said that she was the mom friend, and if she became overcaring when I made other contracts, then I was only gonna call her mom, and she actually wants to be called that, but then there's mom. Hisashi thought for a few seconds. Well, you only see your actual mom once a year, and she hasn't called us for a while. She doesn't really talk to us anymore. Maybe you can call Auden mom, but as a joke. We won't tell Inko about it, K? Yeah. Izuku said, glancing upwards, as if trying to see his brain. You hear that, Auden? Oops, sorry, you're now mom. Auden just laughed. Alright, Izuku, how about you go run around for a little bit? Hisashi suggested when they got home. There's a large time difference between here and Scotland, so we'll have to wait until later in the evening before we can call Inko, okay? Okay, Izuku said, then paused for a few seconds. Hey Auden? Izuku asked. Yes? Auden asked. I know that I just made my contract with you this morning and it's only about 11 in the morning, but do you think maybe we should try to find some other allies? Izuku asked. Auden stayed silent for a few seconds. We can look around, but since you've never interacted with another ghost before me, then there might be no ghosts in the area. We might have to go somewhere else in order to find someone you can make a contract with. I'll ask if that would be alright. I've taken the train before, so maybe visit a graveyard in a different town or something. Izuku asked. Probably, Auden said. But ghosts don't only stick to graveyards. There's also hospitals, places of a large accident, places that people have died, and their ghosts just linger around, but you can find most ghosts just wandering around. Got it, Izuku said. Ooh, I have an idea. Hey, Dad, would it be alright for me to grab some money and go to a different town for a bit? Izuku asked. Why? Hisashi asked, sounding a little concerned. Well, there aren't really ghosts around here, and I kinda want to make more contracts, Izuku said. You've already made one. I don't think you should just make a bunch too soon, Hisashi said. Auden appeared, causing the wings to appear, too. Don't worry, I'll make sure everything's in check, Auden promised. How about we make a limit of only making 3 more contracts before school starts again? That's how long? Another 2 weeks, Izuku said. 3 contracts at max in the next 2 weeks, Auden said. Today's just looking around scouting, if you will. Hisashi said. But you're a ghost, and I'm going to be busy for a while. Will Izuku be safe? I promise he will, Auden said. Both of you are 9. I don't want to risk it, Hisashi said. After all, only one of you can really do something, but if you think it's a good idea, I have one condition. Name it, Izuku said. I want you to bring Kitsuki with you, Hisashi said. I'll call Mitsuki over and explain the situation to her and Kitsuki. I'd feel safer if you had a literal human grenade with you. Dad, that's not nice, Izuku said. You get what I mean, Hisashi said. Come inside for a bit. The 2 of you can watch something, and I'll ask the Bakugos to come over for lunch so I can tell them the good news. Okay, Izuku said. Auden's eyes lit up. Ooh, that means we have about an hour. Which means that I get to show you Sanders' sides. Sanders' sides? Hisashi and Izuku asked at the same time. Auden nodded. My mom and I would watch it when I was a kid. It's where I got the whole side thing from and where I knew the Mind Palace concept from. You'll love it, I promise. Okay, Izuku said. Oh, wait, do you know English? Auden asked. Well, I know plenty, I guess, Izuku said. I taught him English when I moved back from America, Hisashi said proudly. Oh, you lived in America? Auden asked as they walked into the house. I worked there for a while before Inko got a job opportunity in Scotland, then I came back here, Hisashi said. I taught Izuku English and he's pretty smart, so he caught on pretty quick. But I'm not as fluent as Dad is, Izuku said. Alright, Auden said. We can put on Japanese subtitles but still. I promise that you'll love it. We'll have to look it up on YouTube. YouTube? Izuku and Hisashi asked. Ah, right, it's been 200 years, Auden said. It's a video website. I think it's been replaced by HeroTube. Basically the same thing last I checked, though YouTube was still running, but otherwise, we could still find the series somewhere. Okay, Hisashi said. Well, I'm curious now, so how about you two watch it, and at some point, when I don't have work and Izuku doesn't have school, we can make a day out of it and binge watch it. Sounds like a plan, Auden said. Alright, Izuku, you know where the computer is and you know the password, Hisashi said. I'll call you into the kitchen when the Bakugos get here for lunch. Izuku and Auden nodded, then Izuku led Auden over to the room with the computer. About an hour and the surprise of realizing that Izuku was actually fluent in English later, Izuku and Auden were just finishing the episode, losing my motivation, when Hisashi poked his head into the room. Izuku, Auden, the Bakugos are here. Hisashi said. They both looked at him and nodded. Izuku bookmarked the tab, then logged off the computer. He glanced at Auden, who nodded and disappeared, Izuku's wings disappearing as well. Hisashi nodded, then the two walked into the kitchen area, where Mitsuki, Masaru, and Kaken were sitting at the table. Hey, Izuku, Mitsuki said as the boy in question approached, giving him a quick hug. Mind telling us what's up? We can while we eat, Hisashi said, putting down plates in front of each with katsudon, as well as setting one aside for Auden. The Bakugos gave Hisashi a confused look. Hisashi, is someone else joining us for lunch? Masaru asked. Is Inko finally back from Scotland? Mitsuki added, excited about the idea of seeing her best friend again. Sorry, Inko's not back just yet, but yes, we do have someone we'd like you to meet, Hisashi said. He looked at Izuku. Well. Izuku nodded. Auden, out of the frying pan. And into the fire, Auden replied happily as she appeared in the empty seat, causing the three Bakugos to jump. Oh, I didn't realize you adopted, Mitsuki said after a few seconds. Congratulations. Well, that's not actually the case, Hisashi said slowly. Well, then mind telling us why a young girl just appeared in your kitchen? Wait, why does Deku have wings? Kaken exclaimed, his eyes growing wide. His parents jumped and shouted in surprise as they noticed this new feature as well. Izuku smiled sheepishly as he scratched the back of his neck. Well, hi, I'm Auden, Auden said. The best way to describe me is I'm part of Izuku's quirk. Is what? The three Bakugos exclaimed. Izuku flinched. No need to be so loud. Izuku has a quirk, Mitsuki cried. Inko said that he was born without one. Yeah, because of some stupid pinky toe joint or something, Auden said. That isn't the actual way to tell if someone has a quirk. The whole concept doesn't really make sense to me. Then why haven't we met you before? Mitsuki demanded. Wait, this morning, Kaken started. Yep, this morning, I met Auden for the first time, Izuku cut in, causing them to all look at him. My quirk allows me to create and share something called life force, which is basically energy that people use for living, right? Right, Auden said. This morning, Izuku gave me the name Auden, and he accidentally created a contract with me. The contract? Masaru asked, sounding worried. What does that mean? Basically, because I can create life force, I give Auden a small amount of mine, an amount so small that I don't even notice, Izuku explained. I also let her control my ability to care about myself and others. In exchange, I get to use her quirk. He carefully reached back and touched the wings on his back. Which means I get wings. That's not the only part of my quirk, but you'll learn more about that later on, Auden said. Alright, so apparently I have more than wings from the contract, Izuku said. I didn't know until yesterday night about any of this. Last night? Hisashi asked, clearly surprised. Izuku nodded sheepishly. Late last night, I went for a walk, and I met Auden in the park. She looked older than she does now. I looked 17, to be exact. That's the age where I died, Auden muttered. Died? Masaru asked, eyes wide. Yeah, I'm a ghost, Auden said sheepishly. I can see ghosts and make contracts with them by giving them a name, Izuku said. Honestly, it's a pretty cool deal to me. I benefit and he benefits, it's all good, Auden said. So do you only have a contract with Auden, was it? Mitsuki asked. At the moment, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, Hisashi said. They all looked at him. What do you mean? Mitsuki asked. Well, Izuku wants to make more contracts, but we apparently don't have many ghosts around town that he can talk to, Hisashi said. Which means that he would have to go somewhere else with plenty of ghosts. But it would just be me and Izuku looking because he's too busy to come with us today, Auden finished, nodding at Hisashi. And while I have an actual form now, I'm still a ghost. And I'm still a 9-year-old boy, Izuku added. Which would mean it would be dangerous for me and Auden to go around alone. So I was wondering if maybe Katsuki would be free and could go with them? Hisashi asked. Well, we aren't really doing anything today, Masaru said, then looked at Katsuki. What do you think? I think that the whole idea of this quirk is freaking dumb, Kaken said. Katsuki, be nice, Mitsuki hissed. It's alright, it's pretty weird, even to me, Izuku said. After all, yesterday, I didn't even have a quirk and all of a sudden I have Auden who can literally read my mind and I also have wings. It's probably more than a bit much to take in. More than a bit much? Kaken scoffed. You sound like some old man. Actually, that isn't the case, Auden said. Excuse me? Kaken snapped. Formal speech, Auden said. Most people have abandoned it since the rise of quirks for whatever reason, but it still exists but that doesn't matter. If you don't want to come with us, then I think it might be a good idea to wait until Hisashi has some time to bring us or something. No, I'm coming with, Kaken said. I want to see how the heck your stupid quirk works. Itsuki, please be nice, Masaru said. Awesome. Izuku said. Shut up, you stupid Deku, just because you have some quirk doesn't mean you're gonna be more powerful than me. I'm going to be a hero greater than All Might someday. Kaken said. I'm just watching the competition. Aw, you think of me as competition. Izuku said happily. You have a quirk now, obviously you're gonna try to become some hotshot hero, but I'm still gonna leave you in the dust, Kaken said. Greater than All Might, huh? Auden asked, sounding a little bitter, not caring at all, which sounded strange to Izuku. Doesn't take much, he's just popular, but not much else. Izuku gave her an odd look. What do you have against All Might? Is something up? Hisashi asked. Auden and Izuku looked at him. I'll tell you later, just something Auden was saying that was weird, Izuku said, glancing at Auden, who shrugged. I'll tell you later, I'm just not that much of a fan of ya, Auden said. How? Izuku asked. I'll tell you later, Auden said. Okay, Izuku said. Well, let's eat, then get going, Kaken said. Stupid Deku and Auden gonna have to come up with a nickname for you. I'm nicknaming her Mom, Izuku said. But Inko's your mom, Masaru pointed out. It's a joke because she's the mom friend, Izuku said. I see, Mitsuki said. So this trip today. Any specific places? Ghosts tend to hang around graveyards, hospitals, scenes of past accidents, stuff like that, Auden said. However, for the most part, you can find ghosts just about anywhere, but I'm surprised that I haven't really seen any in this area. Or maybe I haven't recognized ghosts as ghosts. Izuku said. I didn't think Auden was a ghost until she said she was. Maybe I've seen some before, but haven't talked to them. Fair enough, but I still haven't seen many. But then again, I was here for a little bit last night and we spent most of today inside or at the Quirk registration office, Auden admitted. Already registered? Mitsuki asked. Hisashi nodded. And we're supposed to check in every time he makes a new contract. I don't think I'm going to make too many in general, Izuku said quickly. I mean, I still want some control over the way I feel. I'll probably only make 1 or 2 before school starts again, 1 or 2 in the school year, maybe 1 during middle school, and by the time I get to high school, I'll have a complete set of sides. Sides? Mitsuki asked. It's a reference, basically those he makes a contract with, Auden said. A reference to what? Mitsuki asked. Long story short, a web series Auden's obsessed with and has dragged me into, Izuku said. You love it, too, Auden said. I mean, it's really great, Izuku admitted. But seriously, what's Morality's name? And Creativity's? Are they like Logic, how his name is Logan? So Chris, and I'm Mason. You'll see, but don't leave out Anxiety, Auden said. Izuku made a face. Anxiety's the bad guy. Anxiety is a precious boy that deserves everyone's love and support, Auden said, sending a wave of care unintentionally. Geez, okay, I got it, Izuku said. We can continue this conversation later after you tell me what's up with you know what. Got it, Auden said. To get back on topic, so we're basically going to a more populated area, stopping by a graveyard, hospital, and walking around. Kaken asked. Easy enough. But there's also the fact that I have to choose ghosts to make a contract with Auden, and I will probably let you know if we see a ghost that we'd like to talk to, Izuku said. Sweet, so let's eat and get going. Thank you for the meal, Kaken said, then began to dig in. Itsuki, Masaru said warningly, but Hisashi waved it off. You're welcome, Hisashi said. Thanks, Dad, Izuku said with a big smile, then began to eat. Itsuki and Masaru sighed, then said thanks and began to eat. Auden stared at the food for a few seconds. She'd done that during breakfast as well, then muttered, "It looks absolutely delicious, thank you," and began to eat. The Sashi grinned, nodded, then ate as well. The Bakugos and the Midoriyas lived in Shizuoka Prefecture, so they decided to take a train to the capital of the place, Shizuoka. Please appreciate this detail, I had to do research on this stuff while walking around a store and don't get what I'm doing. As soon as they got off the train, Kaken and Izuku. Auden was in the Mind Palace, so Izuku didn't have to worry about his wings, and a crowd of people were faced with a huge crowd of people getting on and off the train. Kaken took one look at the crowd, then quickly grabbed the smaller boy's hand. Izuku gave Kaken a confused look, but Kaken just shrugged. "I'm gonna be the best hero ever, I'm not gonna let you and Auden get lost in this crowd," Kaken said. Izuku smiled. "Thanks, Kaken. PSH, let's just go. Does Auden know where we're going?" Kaken asked as the two started moving through the crowd. "I've been in Shizuoka before, but User 7 and I were there to take down some minor villains one time over 30 years back," Auden mused. "Pretty fun hero raid." Izuku suddenly stopped, causing Kaken to stop and give him an odd look. "Wait, hero?" Izuku asked, eyes wide. "Oh, wait, I never said that, huh?" Auden chuckled nervously. I'll tell you later, keep moving, you're making Kaken worry." Izuku looked at Kaken and gave him a small smile. "Sorry, Auden just said something that surprised me." "Just don't stop suddenly, Deku," Kaken said. "Otherwise you'll get lost in the crowd." "Right, sorry, Kaken," Izuku said. "You'd better have a good story to tell. Wait, were you a hero in your life?" Izuku asked. Heroes weren't a thing back when I was alive," Auden said slowly. "Oh," Izuku said. "Well, then. Wait, you mentioned UA before, have you been there with someone? Wait, am I not the first person you've been aside for?" "It's a long story, I promise, I'll tell you later," Auden said. Izuku had a strange feeling, but he shrugged it off and just continued walking. "Hey, excuse me." The young woman stopped and looked at Izuku and Kaken as they walked up to her. "What?" the woman asked. "Can we get directions, please?" Izuku asked. Kaken muttered something about not needing directions. "To where?" the woman asked. "The graveyard?" Izuku asked. The woman's eyes grew wide, then she crossed her arms, giving them her full attention. "Why in the world would you two boys want to go to the graveyard?" Izuku said. "Grandparents living near there." Auden quickly thought. Saying the real reason would sound a little sketchy, and we don't want to appear weird like that. "Our grandparents live near the graveyard, we can get to their place from there, but we're a little lost," Izuku said. "Huh," the woman said. "Didn't think anyone lived near that graveyard anymore." "Why, something wrong with it?" Kaken asked, rolling his eyes. "You two must not be from around here," the woman said. "Rumor has it that some vengeful spirit has the graveyard as their domain." "Ha," Kaken said. "Ghosts aren't that scary." "He might want to be more worried than that," Auden thought. "Why?" Izuku asked. "It might be a wraith, and even I don't want to mess with one of those, but I will if you need me to," Auden replied. "What's a wraith?" Izuku asked. "The ghost that ran out of life force," Auden said. "Wait, you actually have life force?" Izuku asked. "But isn't that what keeps people living?" "Yes, but at the same time no," Auden said. "If that were the case, I'd be alive again cause I'm taking life force from you. What makes it so special in the afterlife is that it's what keeps us sane." "Sane?" Izuku asked worriedly. "Yeah," Auden said. "Ghosts can get life force from graveyards, hospitals, stuff like that. That's why plenty of ghosts are there. When we don't get much life force, we get hungry for it, and the small amount we are usually fine with from those places isn't enough, so we attack other ghosts and even living people. When a ghost first attacks for life force, they become a wraith, and there's no known way to turn wraiths back into regular ghosts. They're like that for 100 more years before they just disappear." "Oh," Izuku said. "Do you think we should even go to the graveyard?" Auden stayed silent for a few seconds. "Well, I'm in the least danger between the three of us. I can scout ahead if I find a wraith, I'll let you know." "Okay," Izuku said. "I wouldn't be so sure whatever spirit is there has drained the life out of people," the woman said. "Even pro heroes are too scared to go there." "We ain't scared," Kaken said. "We'll be careful, but we still need to get there," Izuku said. "We don't need to be careful," Kaken protested. "If you're sure, go that way until you reach 10th Street, take a right, go until Kayamina Street, take a left, go until Willowing Lane, that'll bring you pretty far. From there, everything'll be abandoned, so keep going, and you'll end up getting to the graveyard eventually." That's Kaken started, looking ready to fight. "Thanks for the directions, if we get to the abandoned part of town, I can get us there." He turned to Kaken. "Come on, let's get going." Before Kaken could protest, Izuku dragged him away. Once they were out of earshot, Kaken glared at Izuku. "Deku, what the heck was that?" Auden says that there might actually be something in the graveyard that could kill us, Izuku explained. She's going to scout ahead to make sure we don't get hurt. I'm more worried about him than you, don't get me wrong, protecting you is my priority, but Kakin has almost no life force energy compared to you, Auden said. You'd be fine if a wraith were to attack you before I could stop it. However, a hungry wraith would kill him in a few seconds if one gets to him at all. It could send him into a coma at the very least. Oh, Izuku said. Kakin, stay really close especially when we get closer, Izuku said. On, the graveyard can't be that scary, Kakin said. Auden says that there might actually be something there that could kill us, but you're more likely to get killed, Izuku said. Kakin looked pale. Well, I'm sure that we'll be fine, it's probably just some stupid urban legend that got really popular, point if you get the reference, Kakin said, but couldn't keep the fear out of his voice. Yeah, Izuku said. Well, let's just get there, get this over with, and go to the next place. With that, the two boys picked up the pace. Be pretty abandoned here, Kakin said nervously after they had walked away from the crowd and all houses that didn't look run down a while back. Yeah, probably fine for Auden to come out now, Izuku said. Auden appeared behind the two. Yes, quite right. Izuku and Kakin yelped, jumped, and spun around to look at her. Auden, please don't do that when we're potentially in danger, Izuku asked. Is there a vengeful spirit nearby? Kakin asked. I'm not sure, I'm going to fly ahead and check out the graveyard, plus surrounding areas, but I'll be here in a second if you feel like something's wrong, Auden said, flapping her wings slightly. I could fly all the way across the United States in 4 hours back when I was alive, I can get to you if you even have a bad feeling. Got that? Got it, Izuku and Kakin said at the same time. Alright, I'll keep you updated on what I find, stick together, Auden said, then spread her wings and took off. Instantly, Kakin latched onto Izuku's arm. Izuku gave him an odd look. I don't want you to get hurt and the old hag would be mad if I let you out of my sight, Kakin said. Izuku smiled. Got it. With that, the two continued to walk. The afterlife hadn't been really kind to Himari. Granted, regular life hadn't been so kind, either. In general, existence wasn't fun. In life, Himari had lived in the shadow of her beautiful, brilliant, delightful older sister. The entire family had expected the second daughter to be even better. But their expectations were let down when Himari had been born. She wasn't particularly pretty, she wasn't the brightest, and she'd rather run around with the boys getting dirty than sit around during serious conversations. Her parents had tried to make her better. They plastered makeup on her face, made her dye her chocolate brown hair pitch black, made her stay up late to study, and forbade her from even talking to the servants' children, but she would sneak out often and try to be herself. Her parents hated that, and Himari really tried to resist that urge and study, she really did. She sat through so many conversations, she asked questions of her tutor, she ignored the others. But it became too much. So, when she turned 16, she gave herself a birthday present and snuck out of the house, planning on just having a night to herself. But she got hit by a car and died almost instantly. None of her family showed up for her funeral. They even had her buried in Shizuoka because they didn't want her grave near. She heard them planning it when she wanted to see them one last time. They hadn't even cared, in fact, they belittled her existence, saying that she had been too ugly to live anyway. Too stupid. Too spontaneous. So, Himari went back to the graveyard. She didn't know what she wanted to do now that she was dead. Sure, she could go anywhere, do anything, but her previous lifestyle had made it so she didn't know how to make friends. So, she was just spending eternity in this graveyard. She couldn't even run out of life force and just fade out. And, to make matters worse, a dying wraith had come by a few years previously and scared all the locals away. Nobody lived nearby. No ghost stayed around. It was only her. No sound. Nothing interesting. Just silence. And Himari did not like the silence. But who would want to bother with her? She was ugly, stupid, spontaneous. She deserved the eternity of silence. It was another day. Himari was sitting on her gravestone, as always. She sat perfectly still. Maybe if she could stay still long enough, she'd become smarter. Become less spontaneous. Maybe that would be enough to be pretty. Maybe then she'd be able to make friends. However, later in the day, something happened. Himari heard a sudden gust of wind. Sure, that wasn't unusual. There'd be wind, rain, birds, and all that. But there was something different about this. It was followed by another and another. It didn't sound natural. For the first time in 6 months, dang it, now she had to start again. Himari moved. She looked up from the ground to see someone, a fellow ghost, land at the entrance of the graveyard. She had large, beautiful black wings on her back. Her blonde hair was in a braid that was sitting over her shoulder. She was wearing a simple green dress. The ghost looked about 9 years old. And absolutely gorgeous. Himari stared in shock as the ghost looked around, then saw her. Instantly, the girl tensed up. She's scared because I'm so ugly. I'm a monster, then smiled and walked over, folding her wings behind her back. Hey. The ghost said. Are you the only ghost here? You why yeah, Himari said. Oh, great. The ghost said. You clearly aren't a wraith, you look perfectly sane, which is great. Himari asked. Oh, actually, my friend was worried that a wraith would be here because of the rumors, but it should be fine. The ghost said, then lightly tapped her head. So, what's your name? You Himari said. I don't want to use it anymore. Oh, the ghost said. Well, that's sad. I don't deserve it, Himari blurted, then silently cursed to herself. Why had she said that? The ghost looked surprised. Why? Because I'm hideous, Himari said. My name sounds beautiful, but I'm the opposite. I'm a mess that even a mother couldn't love. She felt tears come to her eyes, but she held them back. I deserve to be alone for the rest of time. I don't deserve to use my awful voice. I don't deserve to talk to someone as pretty as you. The ghost looked surprised, then shook her head. Okay, whoa. What the heck? Whoever told you any of that is clearly blind. Himari asked, her eyes wide. Look, I don't get the whole concept of beauty or ugly, but let me tell you this, you look amazing, the ghost said. What? Himari asked. You heard me, the ghost said. You aren't hideous. Your voice isn't awful actually, it's kinda pleasing to listen to. And you think a mother couldn't love you? Ha. She rolled her eyes. If your mother didn't love you, then something was wrong with her. A mother loves her child unconditionally, otherwise they don't deserve to be called a mother. Well, I mean, sure, some still give their kids up, but that's another story, and that doesn't matter right now. Whatever internal monologue you have that's telling you such awful lies, tell it to go away. Why you really think so? Himari asked, now practically choking on her tears, not caring that they were pouring out of her eyes. Of course. The ghost said, carefully giving Himari a hug, which surprised her. Never let yourself think otherwise, alright. Himari paused for a few seconds, then squeezed the ghost, sobbing into her shoulder for a solid minute while the ghost gently rubbed her back. After a minute, Himari pulled back, wiping away her tears. Thank you, Himari said. I really needed to hear that. That isn't something someone should need to hear, the ghost said, surprised. It should just be said. Everyone is beautiful and that's just a fact. Himari smiled. Thank you. What's your name? Oh, I'm the ghost started. Auden. They both turned their heads to see two boys both about the ghost's age walk into the graveyard. There were so many visitors today. Himari didn't know what was going on, but it made her happy to see more people even if these two boys couldn't see ghosts. Hey, Auden, who's that? The shorter boy asked as the two walked over. Deku, there's nobody here besides you, me, and Auden, the taller boy said. Stupid nerd. Oh, it's another ghost, the ghost said happily. Sorry you can't see her, Kakin. What? Himari asked. Hi. The shorter boy said, holding a hand to Himari. My name's Izuku Midoriya. You've already met my caring side, Auden, and this is my friend, Kakin. What's your name? I don't want to use it, Himari said. No? Izuku asked. Well, that makes it easier. The ghost Auden said. What's that supposed to mean? Himari asked, a little on edge, even more so when Kakin stepped back. Well, I was wondering if you'd like to make a contract. Izuku asked. A contract? Himari asked. What do you mean? Basically, I give you a new name, and I let you take a small portion of my life force, as well as let you control a part of me. For example, Auden controls my ability to care for myself and others, Izuku said. In exchange I get to use your quirk. Himari's eyes grew wide as she registered that. He wants to use my quirk and give me life force and take away my name and trust me with a part of him. Himari's parents had never trusted her with anything, really. She'd never been good enough. They'd never let her use her quirk. It probably wasn't that strong, but it could have been had she trained it. After all, she had an advanced copy quirk. If she could understand how a quirk worked, she could copy it. But it hadn't ever really mattered before. But this boy. Himari bit her lip, then held her hand to the boy. Give me a name, and I'll follow you to the ends of the earth if I have to. Izuku smiled, then reached out and took her hand. I'm going to name you Yui. 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 It was. Perfect, I love it. Himari, no, Yui exclaimed. Just as a light blue string appeared around both their wrists, surprising Yui as the string disappeared. Then Yui felt herself shrink down, and suddenly, she was 9 years old again. Her hair was in 2 braids, and she was wearing a light blue dress with a gray cardigan around her neck, and it felt really comfortable. Seriously, though, I wore a cardigan around my neck for a week on a date, and it's really comfortable. Yui looked at herself, then to Izuku, who smiled. Yui Midoriya, a strange voice said in her head. The moral side of Izuku's personality. Izuku's quirk makes him able to create and share life force. By giving Yui a name, Izuku made a contract. Yui can consume some of Izuku's endless supply of life force, and in exchange, Izuku can use part of Yui's quirk. This also allows the two, plus Aden, to communicate, and it gives Yui a room in Izuku's mind palace, plus the chance to help control everything related to Izuku's morals, and quite a bit dealing with his emotions. Kaken yelped, snapping Yui back into reality as he looked at her. What the Kaken exclaimed. Oh, you can see her, now, Aden said happily. That's one of Izuku's friends, Aden thought, and Yui jumped as she realized that it was telepathic. Aden glanced at her. We can communicate telepathically, and you have a room in the mind palace I'll show you around later. At the moment, it's my room, a living room and a kitchen area, but now we have your room. Why the kitchen area? Izuku asked. I dunno, it showed up when I started creating stuff, Aden admitted. Alright, so now what? Yui asked. We head home, you still have to meet my dad, Izuku said. Oh, and quick comment, I'm the mom friend, so feel free to call me mom if you want, Aden thought happily. I'm just gonna call you Aden, Yui thought. Aw, fine, Aden said, looking at her with an exaggerated pout. Just as they all heard shouting in the distance. Yui jumped, not used to so much noise at one time. The other three looked at her, then back at the source of the noise, then Aden grabbed Yui's hand. Let's go to the mind palace for now, we're Izuku's quirk now, and technically, we shouldn't be out in public places for now, Aden said. Also, this way, I can show you the mind palace while helping Izuku deal with this. She looked at Izuku and Kaken. You two alright with us disappearing? Both boys nodded. Aden nodded too, then the two of them disappeared. As soon as Aden and Yui disappeared, someone came running around a corner, holding a gun. They know, he was wearing a trench coat and a fedora. The man saw the two, then put his gun into a holster on his belt and ran over. You two shouldn't be out here. The man exclaimed. Do you know how dangerous this area is? Detective Lie Detector, also known as Detective Tsukauchi, Aden thought. He's on the police force and he's a literal human lie detector. He can tell if someone's telling the truth. How in the world do you know that? Yui asked. I'll tell you and Izuku later, Aden promised. Does this have to do with why you don't like All Might? Izuku asked. Who doesn't like All Might? Yui exclaimed. That's a long story, I'll tell you two later, Aden said. Come on, this area can't be that dangerous, it's not closed off or anything, Kaken snapped, snapping Izuku out of his mental conversation. Well, still you don't have any business here, Detective Tsukauchi said. Villains have been known to base here. There's nobody else here at the moment, trust me on that fact, Yui said, and Izuku felt a strong wave of moral righteousness. There aren't any villains here at the moment, though, Izuku said. We're safe. How can you be sure of that? The detective asked. Whatever. Someone said that they saw two young boys walking this way, you're lucky that happened, you know. Tell him that it's nice that he worried about us, but you have a way of getting home safely, no need to make a big fuss over nothing, Aden said, sending a care wave. Thanks for your concern, but Kaken and I are fine, Izuku said. We came here knowing that we were going to be safe, and we have a reliable way of staying safe. We'll be leaving here now, probably going to do some shopping or something. Nah, it's been a long day, and we've already done what we need to, so we should head home, Kaken cut in. What did you need to do? Detective Tsukauchi asked. You can't lie to him, but I'm glad that you think of me as a reliable way of staying safe, Aden thought happily. Either that or trusted that the other kid would be able to protect him, Yui thought. A bit of both, Kaken strong, but I have a feeling that I can trust Aden you, too, Yui, Izuku thought. You're both part of me now, literally. I can't wait to get to know both of you better. Aw, thanks, kiddo, Yui thought, and Izuku barely managed to hold back his laughter. He faked it as a cough, although he wasn't sure that it was really convincing, but the detective didn't comment. What? Yui asked. We'll tell you later, Aden thought, humor in her voice. Okay, Yui thought. Part of my quirk allows me to see ghosts, but there aren't many in our hometown, so I wanted to see if I could spot a few, Izuku told the detective. My dad didn't want me to come alone, so Kaken came with me, but he was alright with coming over here. Yeah, some stupid urban legend isn't that scary, Kaken said. Especially since it just looked like some little girl. Mind explaining that as we walk away? Detective Tsukauchi asked. Both boys nodded, then began to follow him. Since I can see ghosts, there's a way for me to let Kaken see as well, so we both found that a little ghost girl was the one that's been scaring people, Izuku said. That's a lie, it was a wraith a few years ago, Yui said softly. Wait, no, that's not it, Izuku said. Yui just told me that it was a different ghost a few years ago. Yui? The detective asked, clearly confused. Oh, the rest of my quirk allows me to make a contract with ghosts, so I made a contract with Yui, the ghost that was living here, and I can talk to her telepathically, Izuku explained. Izuku, I know that you have to answer everything truthfully, but can you please lay off all the information? Auden asked. And let Kaken know, too. However, one of my other contracts has some interesting information about you, Detective Tsukauchi, Izuku said. The detective looked surprised. You know my name? Wait, Auden knows this guy. Kaken asked. Izuku looked at Kaken and nodded. Auden apparently knows a bunch about stuff that most people don't. He looked back at the detective. For example, she called you Detective Lie Detector. No, don't tell him that. Auden exclaimed, sounding freaked out. Instantly, the detective looked interested. Oh. Well, I can only think of one person that's ever called me that. Oh dang it, Auden thought. If it's someone you knew, then it can't be Auden, Izuku said. Maybe it is mind if I meet her? The detective asked. No, Auden thought. Trust me, I have a plan, Izuku thought. Just trust me. Sorry, but Auden's pretty shy and besides, I'm pretty sure it isn't, Izuku said. I mean, when's the last time you saw the other person? Late last night she ran away and we're trying to track her, Detective Tsukauchi said. I can't go back to that life, they can't make me, I refuse to do that, Auden started. That's impossible, then I met Auden late last night and she's been dead for a while, ghosts can't be classified as runaways, Izuku said. But I'm sure that you knew that, Detective. The detective looked surprised, then smiled softly. Smart kid. You're right, besides, the person that I know probably wouldn't even go to a young kid and make a contract, whole being dead thing aside. My mistake. That's alright, everyone makes them, Izuku said. But let's just go, Kaken and I still have to stop by the mall, then my dad wants us home before supper time after all, like you said, we're both still kids. Of course, the detective said. I'll walk you back to the normal part of town but don't come this way again. I don't care if whatever urban legend is false, it's still dangerous. You don't have to worry about us, detective, but thanks for making sure we get back safe, Izuku said. Ooh, mention something about the police force's work. Yui thought excitedly. But thinking we're definitely going to get along just fine, Auden thought. But, I mean, after all, that is the job of the police force, and you guys are all pretty good at your jobs, you'd have to be just to come all this way to make sure two kids are safe, based on someone thinking that they walked to a rundown dangerous part of town, Izuku said. Detective Tsukauchi looked surprised, then proud. Yep. The police force doesn't really get that kind of recognition like we used to, it's nice to hear you put it like that. The heroes wouldn't be half as great without the police force there, Auden thought. Without the police force, the heroes wouldn't be as successful, Izuku said. You guys deserve some more recognition. Yeah, the detective said, then shook his head. Let's pick up the pace, I do have some other stuff to be doing, too. With that, the three began to speed walk back to the regular part of town. Hey, Deku, what happened back there? Huh? Izuku asked, looking at Kaken. They were sitting on the train, there weren't that many people and they each had a shopping bag, they'd gone to the mall, and while Kaken had gotten some cool new hero merch, Izuku had decided to let Yui and Auden pick some stuff out for his room. He knew that they had their own rooms, but still. This way, he could have something that reminded him of them in his room. Which store? No, earlier, with that detective guy, Kaken said. You started going on about how great the police force is. Do you want to be a police officer now or something? Auden apparently knows him, and she thought we were giving up too much information, so she suggested that I change the subject, Izuku said, then smiled. And no, I don't want to be a police officer. I'm going to be one of the greatest heroes. But the quirk that depends on others? Kaken asked. I'm going to beat you with my quirk, my own quirk. Don't think that you're that much of a hotshot now that you have a quirk, stupid Deku. You'll get hurt and your dad would get mad at me. I'll be fine, but thanks for your concern, Kaken, Izuku said. And I know that you're powerful, but I'm going to work my hardest. He looked at his hands. I know that I'm behind everyone. At the moment, the only thing I can do is call upon Auden and Yui, and the only quirk I can use is Auden's wings. Everyone started from the bottom at the age 4, so they're leagues ahead of my 5-year late start, but I'm going to work as hard as I can. I'm going to have to work twice as hard as everyone else if I want to catch up by the time we take high school entrance exams, and even more if I want to stand a chance of going to UA. He balled his hands into fists. I'm not stupid. I know that the chances of getting into UA are slim, and I'm even less likely to get in than anyone else, quirk or no quirk. But? Kaken asked. I know you, stupid Deku. I know that you're about to say but I'm not going to give up, Izuku said. Go beyond plus ultra. Push past your limits and create new ones. Push yourself to the breaking point and make it through. That's how I'm going to make it into UA. I'm still going to be working hard, don't you dare look down on me. Kaken snapped. I never have and I never will, Izuku said. You're stronger than me and I'm aware of that, but I'm still going to make it as far as I can. You're shooting for the moon, but even if you miss, you land among the stars, Auden thought quietly. I'm shooting for the moon, but even if I miss, even if I mess up big time, I'm still going to land among the stars. I'm still going to do my absolute best and make it somewhere with my life, Izuku said, then scoffed. At least I don't have to worry about quirkless discrimination when it comes to finding a job. There was a small pause. Excuse me, what the heck? Auden asked. Ooh, I know about this, Yui replied. Most workplaces refuse quirkless people even if they aren't allowed to use their quirks at the job. It's really weird, honestly. There was another pause. What the heck? Auden yelled, causing Izuku to flinch from the noise. You're telling me that quirkless people are being treated like this? Glove off, pick up the tempo. Point if you get the reference. What? Kaken asked. Auden's about to hit someone because of quirkless discrimination, Izuku said. You know what, I don't think I want to know, Kaken said. But, I mean, what can quirkless people do? An absolutely angry Auden appeared, but, surprisingly, no wings appeared on Izuku's back, but nobody noticed as Auden poked Kaken in the chest hard and people nearby jumped at the sudden appearance of the young girl. Now you listen to me, Kitsuki Bakugo, Auden hissed. Quirkless people aren't any different than people with quirks. Quirkless people are just as strong, just as hardworking, just as smart. Quirkless people got mankind into space, invented this very train we're riding, and have kept civilization advancing for how long? And, suddenly, people start getting quirks, and technology advancements come to a freaking halt. It's been 200 years since quirks first appeared, but Japan, America, the entire world hasn't advanced a single bit besides their worshipping of heroes in that regard. It's almost like we went back to ancient times when people made up entire religions. So do not speak ill of quirkless people. With each word of the last sentence, she poked him in the chest for emphasis. Got that? Kaken gulped. Gee, got it. But now remember it, Auden said, then disappeared. Everyone stared at Izuku, and Kaken looked terrified, honestly. Why is Auden so scary? Kaken asked. You're afraid of Auden? Izuku asked. That was Kaken said. You're getting defensive because she cares about people, Izuku interrupted. She's literally the one in charge of caring. Honestly, that wasn't as surprising as it could have been. He shrugged. Let's just get home. I still have to call mom about all this and tell dad about Yui. Ooh, this is going to be a fun conversation. Auden said, no trace of the previous conversation. Izuku could practically feel Yui smiling as she laughed. Izuku smiled slightly, then looked at Kaken. So, how do you think I should let our classmates know that I have a quirk now? Hey dad. Izuku said happily as he walked into their house. Hisashi, who was sitting at the table, smiled at Izuku. What's up, Izuku? Did you make any new contracts? Yeah. Izuku sighed. Yui, Auden, time to shine. Izuku thought. Yui and Auden appeared next to Izuku, causing Hisashi to jump. Auden, and what's your name? Hisashi asked, smiling at Yui. I'm Yui, Yui said. She's my moral side, and she gets some say in my emotions, Izuku explained. Nice, and it's nice to meet you, Yui, Hisashi said. I'm Izuku's dad, Hisashi. He chuckled. At this rate, we're going to have so many of you that we won't be able to fit us all at the dinner table. Huh? Yui asked, eyes wide. What, did you think that I'd have you sit somewhere else? Hisashi asked. All you sides get to eat with us. I just hope you don't mind my cooking. You're good at cooking, nothing to worry about there, Auden said happily. Thanks. Hisashi said. Now, I'm going to get supper started before too long, but how about we call Inko and see if she's awake and can have a conversation with us quick? Yes. Izuku said happily. I can't wait to tell mom that I have a quirk now. Hisashi grinned, then took out his phone and pulled up Inko's contact information, pressing the call button and putting it on speaker. The phone rang for a few seconds, then Inko answered. Hello. Hey, Inko, Hisashi said. Hey mom. Izuku said happily. Oh, Hisashi, Izuku, is something wrong? Inko asked. I usually call you once a month. Well, something pretty special happened today, and I thought you might want to know about it, Hisashi said. What? Inko asked. Did Izuku get a GIRLFRIEND? You, mom, no. Izuku said, shaking his head. And causing Auden and Yui to burst out laughing. Who's there? Inko asked. Yeah, Izuku, did you get a girlfriend? Yui giggled teasingly. That's not funny, Yui. Izuku pouted. Who's that? Inko asked. They all looked at the phone. I got my quirk. Izuku exclaimed. Really? Inko asked happily. Oh, honey, I'm so proud, but why are there others there? My quirk is called Life Force. I can create and share life force, which is basically energy that keeps us alive, and so I can see ghosts and give them names and make contracts with them that give them some of my life force and let them take control of some part of my personality, and in exchange, I get to use their quirks," Izuku said happily. "Speaking of, where did Auden's wings go?" Hisashi asked. "Who's Auden?" Inko asked. "I'm Auden. I'm in charge of Izuku's ability to care for himself and others, and I have wings," Auden said happily, spinning around, causing them all to laugh besides a confused Inko. "And I'm Yui. I'm in charge of Izuku's morals and emotions," Yui said. "That's all at the moment, but I'm going to make more contracts over time, and I'm going to make more friends," Izuku said. "Oh, Izuku, I'm so happy for you. I can't wait to meet them," Inko said. "Well, I have to go to work, but I'll call before long. Let me know if you make more of these friends, alright?" "Of course," Izuku said. "Bye, Mom." "I, Izuku, love you too," Hisashi, Inko said, then hung up. They stayed silent for a few seconds. "Well, I'm going to get started on supper," Hisashi said. "You three do whatever while I do that. I'll tell you everything after we eat," Auden promised. "Alright," Izuku thought. "Ooh, how about I show you my action figures?" Izuku suggested excitedly. "Ooh, sure," Yui said. "Sounds like fun," Auden said. "Alright," Izuku said, then lead them to his room. "Okay, Auden, you said that you'd tell us the whole story after supper, so what's going on?" Izuku, Yui, and Auden were sitting on the living room floor. Hisashi was working on his laptop on the couch, but it was clear that he was paying more attention to them than his laptop. "Yeah, how can someone not like All Might?" Yui asked. "And you mentioned something about User 7 and that you lived in America. Mind telling us how you ended up in Japan?" Izuku asked. Auden took a deep breath. "Well, it's a long story, but to understand all of it, I'll have to start at the very beginning, back before I was a ghost tech, back before I was even born. For this story to make sense, we start with a young girl who went by the name of Janice. Janice lived in a small town somewhere in America over 200 years ago," Auden said. "She seemed like your average girl. She didn't have a quirk. Nobody did at the time, they didn't even exist yet. She was a bit of a nerd, had glasses, always wore a ponytail, was in the school marching band, had a few friends, was very introverted around people she didn't really know, but still. Life was pretty normal until one day when she was 17 years old. It was a summer day that started just like any other. Janice didn't really have anything going on that day, so she hopped onto her bike and just biked around some country roads to kill time. She biked and biked and biked until she found herself with a flat tire. So, she stopped, got off her bike, and started to walk her bike home, but suddenly, there was a strange flash in the woods nearby. Janice was really curious, so she walked over, and, to her surprise, she found a strange green substance. You've probably seen movies, your stereotypical radioactive waste. Janice didn't touch it. She wasn't stupid, but getting close to it was enough. She walked away, but she got dizzy, her back ached, her vision got blurry, but she still continued to walk and walk until she collapsed on the side of the road because she got so dizzy. Then, all of a sudden, it went away. Her back felt fine, her head didn't hurt, she could see clearly, and she felt something on her back. "Wings?" Izuku whispered. Auden nodded. A pair of wings appeared out of Janice's back. Of course, she freaked out, then began to run home, but it hurt. Her wings were so big that they dragged on the ground and she could feel them, but she didn't know how to move them yet, and she didn't have anything to tie them with so they wouldn't drag, so she ran home, threw her bike into the yard, and walked inside. Yelling to her parents that something was wrong. They came running and saw her wings. Her mother screamed upon seeing her daughter with wings. Janice startled at that, then turned and ran. Her wings started flapping as she ran out of the house, and, just like that, she flew into the air. She didn't know what she was doing, but she just flew as far as she could. She didn't go back home. After a whole day, her parents freaked out and called the police. They explained the whole situation, Wings and all the police sent helicopters in, and after too long, they found Janice, but they weren't planning on sending her home. Yui gasped. And no, they didn't. They brought her to a research facility to figure out what had happened, Auden said, gulping. As she stayed there for a few years until another case was found, a baby in China that could glow. The government realized that Janice wasn't the only one, and that this wasn't just some isolated case, especially when more started appearing around the world. It still took them 3 years after the baby was born before they released Janice. It had been about 5 years there. When she got home, she wanted to see her best friends, her crush, only to realize that they'd all forgotten her. They'd all moved on, so Janice was nothing. Her crush had already married, they already had a baby boy named Lucas. He later changed his name to Junichiro, but for most of my life and death, I've called him Liam, so I have a harder time calling him Junichiro. I'll get to that part. Janice was disappointed, but she decided to move on. She didn't want to stay there, so she moved away. The government had given her an education when she was captive there, and they also gave her money, so she moved to Japan, having learned Japanese in captivity, and Japan having a higher number of people with powers than America had at the time, and got a job at a police department with her wings. She didn't need a police car, and she could go much faster. Of course, she still went back to that small town each year for Christmas. Her family was wary of her, and her friends tried to get to know her again, but it never was the same. But her crush and his wife made the decision to make Janice the godmother of their children. 3 years after she'd come back, they had another son named Yoichi. Liam. I'd usually tease him and call him Liam, but Yoichi makes more sense for the story. 4 years later, they had a daughter named Irene. Auden bit her lip, tears coming to her eyes. "You?" Izuku whispered. Auden nodded. But there was something wrong with me. I didn't look like their child. I was born with a pair of wings, just like Janice. I was strong, too, and when I could speak, my voice did something strange. I could do something with my surroundings. And my quirk's always been there, and my birth mother was terrified by me. So, when Janice came around for Christmas like she did every year, my birth mother shoved me at her and screamed that she did something to me. She made me strange, she made me a freak. "That's not true, you aren't a freak," Yui said. I know, Auden said. But still. Janice was angry, so she adopted me on the spot and took me away with her to Japan. She raised me as her daughter. She taught me how to fly. When she noticed my strength and speed, she helped me control it. When my voice did stuff, she taught me to control it so I could use that power while singing only. I loved her. Janice was my mom. I called her that. If it hadn't been for the yearly Christmas visits and my birth mother yelling about me being a freak of a daughter, I never would have known better, honestly. I even looked like Janice. So, until I was about 13 years old, that's how things worked. I lived with Janice, saw my brothers once a year, and everything was fine. I even interned on the police force from time to time because I was so fast I could outfly Janice, and when someone needed to get to Florida because of a family emergency when we were visiting one time, I flew them over and got back before the day was over. We didn't even miss our plane. Once that happened, I actually ended up doing a part-time job where I flew people around, so they didn't have to take a train or car or something. Quirk regulations weren't really in place as much back then. Overall, it was pretty fun, but when I was 13, my real parents died in a car crash. Yui and Izuku gasped, as did Hisashi, but he wasn't as hearable. Yeah, Auden said. Janice and I went to the town for the funeral, then flew with my brothers back to Japan, since she was their godmother. So, Janice bought a larger house for us, but it was barely bigger, which was fine. I mean, Lucas was 19, but he didn't want to be left in America, so he just ended up going to college in Japan, deciding that he'd rather go to college here instead of in America because of quirkism. Yoichi was 16, and because he was pretty nerdy and didn't have many friends in America anyway, not to mention being sick often and, no offense to him, pretty weak, he didn't really care what happened as long as he had some personal space because he didn't like being in the house. Janice had a quirk, I had a quirk, and Lucas had a quirk, too. Could take other people's quirks and give them to others. Can you guess who these two are? Wait, that's a thing? Izuku asked. Yeah, Auden said. Of course, there weren't that many people with quirks back then, which made Yoichi angry about it. Before, he'd been just like almost everyone else in town, but now he was living with 3 other people with quirks in a huge city without any friends and a sister that he'd grown up thinking was a freak. Bjorn, Izuku started. That's what he grew up thinking. I don't think of myself that way, Auden said. But yeah. Anyways. I didn't really get along with either of them that well, but it was fine. Lucas was at college, Yoichi avoided me, and I got to be with Janice plenty. And things went okay for the next 5 years. I made plenty of money with my business, Lucas, and I ended up getting along pretty well, better than either of us got along with Yoichi, really, although we ended up having a semi-stable relationship once he went away for college. Once he didn't have to be around me all the time. So yeah. So, when I was 17, though, my mom wanted me to get my driver's license because of my work with the police. I could get mine a little early, but with my wings, driving wasn't easy, but as a just in case if my wings got injured, well, we decided to go for it. So, I got my learner's permit and started practicing driving with Janice. One winter day, Lucas had to get to a planetarium a little ways out of town, but he didn't have a car, so Janice had me drive the two of them. It wasn't a good idea. There were icy roads that day that we didn't know about, and I didn't know a little ways out of the city, a large semi spun out of control and hit us. The other 3 gasped, and Auden was crying. We were sent flying and landed upside down, Auden said through sobs. Mom and I were killed almost instantly. The semi-driver managed to call an ambulance, and Lucas survived, but something happened just as I died. Lucas T tried to reach me. I was closer to him and he accidentally took my quirk just as I died. She sniffed. That caused him to take my sola as well. He freaked out. He was so scared. He ended up giving my quirk and me to Yoichi. So he would have something like that and hopefully help with his condition. But he didn't factor in something. Yoichi W wasn't quirkless. Wait, you said that he was, though, you said softly. We thought that he was, Auden said. Instead, he had a hidden quirk. It was called stockpile. It stored energy, but never enough to help him, and Yoichi could give it to someone else. That person would then add energy and pass it on. Rinse and repeat. With each person to receive it, the energy would become more powerful. Wow, that sounds useful, Izuku said. It wasn't, really, Auden said. Without an offensive quirk, Yoichi couldn't use that energy. But he had you and your quirk, Hisashi said. They all looked at him. Auden nodded. Because of the nature of his quirk and the fact that my soul was attached to my quirk, my soul became attached to his quirk. What that meant was that I couldn't go far from whoever had the quirk at most a few yards, but that was about it. Yoichi did not want that. He didn't like the idea that his dead sister was stuck following him around. He didn't even call me by my name. He gave me the name One for All, or Ofa for short, so he could pretend that I was someone else, but I'll get there. She took a deep breath. Things got weird after that. Yoichi got stronger, but Lucas Junichiro, he became different than my brother after my death. Well, Junichiro locked Yoichi in an underground vault. I'm sorry, what? Hisashi exclaimed, eyes wide. So? Auden said, clasping her hands together. Junichiro was tired of quirk discrimination and, after my death, become some sort of, I'd best describe it as a mafia boss. That escalated, Izuku said. I know I can't remember all the details, I'm just surprised I remember my actual name after all this time, Auden said. But yeah. Fun fact. Yoichi was opposed to Junichiro's methods, so he tried to fight him, and well. Underground vault. She thought for a few seconds. To continue to the next part, Yoichi and Junichiro didn't know that I could be passed on to the next person until Lucas got some new quirks. One to make him basically immortal, one to make him teleport, one for offense I don't remember what it is right now, and one that could bring back the dead. Wait, so Izuku started. Junichiro came after Yoichi and tried to get me back. It was too late to find Mom's ghost. I had no idea where she was, Auden said. The two fought, and Yoichi managed to escape with the help of two vigilantes that wanted to see Junichiro defeated. I can't remember their names, honestly, but they found Yoichi and got him out of there. Yoichi didn't know how his part of my quirk worked, so the three, while hiding from Junichiro, managed to eventually find someone that could see what quirks people had. That's when they found out that I could be passed along through DNA transfer. As a result, as time passed, and, eventually, I was passed over to one of the two vigilantes, and not long later, Yoichi died, and the two vigilantes fled. My full quirk didn't transfer, however, only really the strength part, as well as storing energy. He eventually passed me on to the other vigilante, dying not long later to Junichiro. The second vigilante then fled to America, assuming that, because of the quirk discrimination being the reason Junichiro had left in the first place. Of course, he had been wrong. Junichiro had followed, going by Lucas again because it was America, following him around until everything really went down in Rhode Island at the start of the American Quirk Wars. At that point, because of the Quirk Wars, he had to stay and fight Lucas off as well as he could. The third user, I started calling them users after a while, with Yoichi being the first, was pretty nice to me, and we fought Lucas together time and time again, and Lucas eventually killed him, the third user barely managing to pass the quirk onto the fourth user before fully dying. His dying moments being what's kinda counted as what stopped the Quirk Wars, but that's another story. The fourth user didn't really acknowledge me when he could get away with it. He didn't really like me, because he thought that I could have saved the third user, who was his hero, but yeah. Why aren't you giving us any of their names? Hisashi asked. Because I can't remember most of them, but they don't really matter right now. If I really need to, I can probably find out more about them later, Auden said. Their names aren't part of the story. To me, users appear and disappear in a blink of an eye. On average, they last 25 years. Anyway. The third user's death was what really ended the Quirk Wars, and to prevent something similar from happening, Rhode Island named 7 people as official heroes, the 7 big figures fighting in the war. The third user was named an honorary hero, and a statue was built in his honor, but he was gone. The rest of the states, then the rest of the world, followed Rhode Island's example and began to name pro-heroes, setting up schools and programs to train the next generations so people would be safe. The fourth user decided that he didn't really want to do that, deciding to make the quirk as strong as possible. He moved over to Japan and started to live in seclusion, training as well as he could so the next user would be stronger. Lucas eventually found him, but the fourth user had already passed me on to the next user. He was a pro hero. I don't really remember his name, he was underground. However, he had a different quirk that I remember, called Black Whip, and he preferred to use that instead, so, after some time, he decided that he didn't want Lucas to keep attacking him. Lucas had, at this point, started attacking more and more people, trying to lure the users out. User 5 eventually decided that he wanted to give the quirk to a vigilante that was eager to fight Lucas with all her might, but that's when something a little disturbing about the quirk was discovered. "Do I want to hear it?" Izuku asked nervously. Auden bit her lip. "I'm not completely sure, but I should probably tell you. Don't worry, though. You don't have to worry about it. I don't have that amount of energy. You have the version of the quirk from back when I was alive, not the added energy of the users." "Okay," Izuku said. "So user 5 tried to give the quirk to a vigilante, one that he'd seen time and time again on the streets," Auden said. "Of course, they agreed, but as soon as I was transferred over to the other, something went wrong and we discovered a painful truth about the quirk. With each and every new user, as more energy was added, each user had to have a certain amount of strength to contain the energy. Before that, there hadn't been a problem, but that vigilante wasn't strong enough to contain the energy and they exploded." Izuku, Yui, and Hisashi's eyes all bulged as Auden shuddered at the memory. "I was instantly transferred back to user 5, who was angry about the whole thing, but he was too afraid of trying to give me to someone else. He was scarred for life after that, and, honestly, I would have been too, but I'd seen some of the same stuff and I'm already dead, so that can't exactly work." She chuckled a little, but it did nothing to relieve the tension in the room. So, user 5 ended up discovering the whole energy thing, so he eventually found a new user and told them about the quirk, but instead said that in order for them to be worthy of it, they'd have to train their muscles and body to contain the energy. He probably should have said that to the user. They already didn't have any self-worth. I spotted him trying to jump off a building, and that's how we found him in the first place. Strangely, though, this pushed the boy to get stronger, to feel that he was worthy of something, anything. It took him 5 years before user 5 decided that it was about time to try to pass on the quirk, and it worked, but Lucas took her life about a year later. User 6 was weirded out by me, but discovered something interesting. If he wanted someone to be able to see me, they could. So, he told me to stay silent and he showed me off to his friends, teachers, anyone, like I was some kind of trophy that proved that he was worthy. Ugh. I hated user 6, but I didn't really say anything, so I just waited. I waited as Lucas fought him again and again, and eventually, user 6 found a girl named, we're finally getting to the point where their names are important. Nana Shimura. Nana Shimura? Hisashi asked, clearly surprised. They all looked at him. "You know her?" Izuku asked. "I know of her," Hisashi corrected. "She was a pro hero named Juyoku. She had super strength and she could fly around. She's been dead for, I wanna say, 20 some years now. 22, to be exact, at least, I'm pretty sure," Auden said. "I first met her when she was 2 years from going for hero school entrance exams. User 6 trained her and gave her the quirk with 6 months to spare, then trained her in the use of the quirk in that time, dying shortly after Nana took her entrance exams, but that one wasn't because of Lucas. In fact, when user 6 met Nana, Lucas had dropped off the map entirely. Sure, some things seemed connected to him, but there were no real leads. User 6 died from cancer, and Nana went through high school peacefully without worries. In fact, it was so long before Lucas showed up again that she even fell in love and started a family. She had a husband and a son before Lucas showed up again with a vengeance, more determined than ever to take Nana down. In fear for her family, Nana broke up with her husband and only saw her son 2 or 3 times a year. Her son grew up as one of the few people she allowed to see me, but he was kind to me. Whenever he was at Nana's house, I was his babysitter and we played all kinds of games. I honestly wanted to beg Nana to let her son become user 9, but I knew that she would refuse. She didn't want her family to get involved in the first place. So, her son grew up resenting his mother, and over time, he kinda started hating me, too. Then Nana found her perfect user 9. A boy like Yoichi, a boy that everyone thought was quirkless, but he had the passion and drive to become a great hero. His name was Toshinori Yagi, and I'll tell you who he is today in a minute. His parents didn't really care about him, so Nana adopted him and trained him, which made her son resent her. He wanted that relationship with her, but she pushed him away and offered it to a complete stranger instead. Of course, though, she still saw him 2 or 3 times a year, and she saw the family that he made for himself, and she allowed them to see me, too, as they got older. Auden smiled sadly. She had a granddaughter named Hana and a grandson named Tinko. I never really got to know them that well because Lucas killed Nana when Tinko, the younger one, was about 3 years old, and Toshinori refused to see them after that, but Hana was really kind to me, and I was constantly holding Tinko, since he was really young and wanted to be held. Auden took a deep breath. Toshinori resented my very existence, saying that if only I had been a better quirk because, according to him, that's all I was, a quirk that he called One for All, given to him so he could fight Lucas, who'd been called All for One by more than a few of the past users. Then Nana would still be alive. Lucas All for One would be long gone. Toshinori wouldn't have to live with his master gone, ignoring the fact that he never would have gotten the quirk gotten me had that been true and I wasn't the one that fought my brother. Sure, I sometimes stepped in to stop him from killing the users because I wasn't sure what would happen to me, otherwise I never really cared for any of them. Besides user 3, none of them were really that nice to me, but other than that I didn't want to hurt my brother. I just didn't. No matter how many people he hurt, no matter who he killed, I can't help but think of him as my older brother. He's in pain because he lost me and mom, and trying to revive me, he killed our other brother. Lucas, he's my older brother. I can't hate him because there were days when I wanted nothing more than to betray the current user. Sometimes I wish that Lucas could kill them, well, not really, but find a way to get me back and revive me, but other days, I wanted him to be arrested, could only see him as Junichiro, this bad person that had hurt so many people. He needs professional help. He probably has severe PTSD from the incident that just never went away. And now he can't even die. He's stuck how he is unless he can get rid of the quirk that keeps him alive, but he won't. He just wants to have some kind of family again. A full family, but he won't be able to get that with mom and Yoichi long gone. I don't even know where either one is. I mean, there's lingering energy from Yoichi left with Toshinori, but other than that, he's just gone. Auden took a deep breath. But that's not the point right now. Toshinori ended up going to UA High, and he graduated to become All Might. What? Izuku, Yui, and Hisashi exclaimed at the same time. Auden nodded. Yes, User 8, Toshinori Yagi, is All Might, the greatest pro hero to ever grace the earth with his presence. He's kind to people, but I can never forgive him for anything. Honestly, I don't think I could ever forgive any of the users. They used me, and when they got sick of me, they just passed me to the next one in hopes that they could get rid of Lucas, but they never really could. She took another deep breath. It's been about 4 days now. All Might fought Lucas 4 days ago. No backup or anything. In a rash decision, he fought my brother, but Lucas nearly killed him. But towards the end of the battle, Lucas sent a black beam towards All Might. I dove in front of him and took the hit, but All Might still got really hurt. The next beam Lucas sent was a strange pink color, and it made it so there wasn't any more pain. He even kinda healed All Might, which didn't make sense until I stepped away from the battle and went further from All Might than I had ever gone from a user before. It was amazing. I could go places that I wanted to, but at the end of the battle, which came quick after that, All Might smashed Lucas's head into the ground. Any normal person would have died, but Lucas didn't. Maybe I should have said something so All Might could finish him off. So I could be with Lucas's ghost and leave the users behind forever, but I didn't. I let All Might believe that my brother was dead as the police arrived on the scene, and All Might was taken to the hospital and put into surgery for a large wound in his side. He'll recover from it and go back to being a hero again, I can guarantee it. But while All Might was in surgery, I took the liberty to explore the entire hospital, walking around and talking to ghosts and people that were close to death. It was wonderful, talking to people that I wanted to talk to. On the 3rd day at the hospital, though yesterday I left and found myself at the park. She looked at Izuku. They all did. That's when I saw you, a kid that was genuinely concerned about me. She snorted. The kid that thought that he was quirkless, but really wasn't. I said that I would see you this morning, then went back to the hospital. All Might was awake, and he, as well as a few others that could see me, scolded me for leaving, but I told them that I could do whatever I wanted, and I told All Might that I wasn't going to stay around, and I let my wings out, completely disconnecting myself from him as I ran out of there and flew away. The rest is history, also known as today. She smiled. Izuku, Hisashi, Yui. I've only met the 3 of you today, but you've already been kinder to me than any user has since user 3. Honestly, you've probably been nicer than even Nana's family was. She sniffed, then wiped away some stray tears. I love you guys already. Even though I've just met you, I want to stay with you all forever, make more memories that actually mean something to me, with people I actually care about, away from the entire situation. Away from constantly fighting my brother. Away from just being wanted because of my quirk. Away from it all. Because you guys are the best people I've met in a long time, and I love it. Auden, thank you, Izuku said. I can promise that we'll make sure you're included. You're part of me now, and I refuse to let you be hurt like that again. If another side wants to disagree and hurt you, then I dunno, can I even get rid of a side? I don't know, and I don't think I want to, Hisashi said. But don't worry, you're a good judge of character, Izuku. I'm sure that none of your sides will ever be mean. Thanks, Dad, Izuku said. Auden smiled. Thank you. No, thank you for telling us everything, Izuku said. If you want, we can clean all the All Might merch out of my room and give it to Kaken and Hito-chan. I don't think I'll ever think of All Might completely the same again. He's a good hero, Auden said. Really? It's just how he treated me. Still, I won't like anyone that mistreats my sides. I don't care if they're a pro hero, vigilante, villain, regular person, it doesn't matter. Izuku said, then held a hand to Auden. Got it? Auden smiled, then grabbed his hand. Got it. Now, it's getting kinda late, we should get ready for bed, Izuku said. Ooh, sleeping in the Mind Palace, let's see what that's like. Yui said, then she and Auden disappeared. Good night, Izuku, Auden, Yui, Hisashi said as he tucked Izuku into bed, then turned off the lights and closed the door. Izuku smiled, then closed his eyes. And found himself in a living room area, where Auden and Yui were sitting on a couch. There was only a couch and a side table. All three looked surprised. When asleep, Izuku Midoriya has access to the Mind Palace, the voice said. He will gain energy while in the Mind Palace, and he gets to spend time there. All three stayed silent for a few seconds. Welcome to the Mind Palace. Auden said, sounding confused herself. Oh, what's going to happen next? What did you guys think about Auden's backstory? I'm not sure about whether you guys want part 2 or not. If I get 200 subscribers after this part, I will definitely upload the full story. Okay, it's time for me to go. Peace out.